What am I supposed to do with this trash gift?
What am I supposed to do with this trash gift? Ethan Cole's laughter cut through the grand ballroom like a blade, echoed instantly by the glamorous crowd around him. Flashing cameras caught his smirk as the poor woman before him clutched the empty space where her offering had been, her trembling hands exposed under the crystal light. The chandeliers glittered, but their brilliance only sharpened the cruelty in the air. Guests in gowns and tuxedos gasped, some laughing nervously, others leaning in hungry for scandal. Ethan, the billionaire everyone admired, had turned his birthday celebration into a spectacle of humiliation. And yet, behind her silence, the woman's eyes carried something stronger than shame, something that would soon unravel everything he thought he had buried, because this was no stranger. And the trash gift, he mocked, would force Ethan to face a truth darker and deeper than any scandal. A truth that, once revealed, would leave the entire room shocked beyond words. Before we begin this emotional story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and don't forget to leave your like so you can keep following us. The chandeliers blazed like frozen waterfalls of light, each crystal shard scattering diamonds across the marble floor of the ballroom. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their bows dancing as if trained to echo the opulence of the night. The air was thick with perfume, champagne bubbles, and the murmurs of New York's most powerful figures. Politicians in tailored suits rubbed shoulders with Hollywood stars, while CEOs clinked glasses with senators. Tonight was not just another birthday. It was the 40th celebration of Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had clawed his way from the gutters of Brooklyn to the throne of Manhattan's elite. Ethan stood at the center of it all, black tuxedo sharp as a blade, his smile trained like a weapon for cameras flashing from every direction. Reporters whispered his name as if it were currency. Socialites circled him like moths orbiting a flame. He thrived on it. The admiration, the envy, the need everyone felt to be close to him. To Ethan Cole, someone toasted, raising a glass of champagne. The crowd echoed in unison, the crystal flutes shimmering under the lights. Then, breaking through the glittering sea of gowns and jewels, came a figure no one expected. An older woman, her grey hair pulled into a tidy bun, her dress plain and worn compared to the satin and silk around her. She moved slowly, almost hesitantly, yet her eyes carried a weight the others lacked. In her hands a small box wrapped with care, red ribbon neatly tied, though the corners of the paper showed creases as if folded and unfolded many times before. The cameras swiveled instantly, eager for something unusual. Whispers darted like sparks through the crowd. Ethan's smile widened, not out of warmth, but curiosity sharpened with arrogance. "Well, what do we have here?" he asked, his voice rich enough to fill the cavernous room. He accepted the box, holding it up for all to see. Guests leaned closer, the anticipation sweeter than the champagne on their tongues. The woman bowed her head slightly, her voice barely audible against the hum of the room. "It's a gift for you, Ethan." He let the words hang in the air, savoring them like a predator teasing prey. He tugged the ribbon loose with exaggerated flair, peeling the paper back with deliberate slowness. The crowd chuckled at his theatrics, their eyes fixed on the spectacle. Finally, he lifted the lid of the box and froze. Inside lay a pair of gloves, worn, patched, and frayed at the edges. A ripple of confusion ran through the room, followed by a burst of laughter from the corner. Ethan's grin returned, crueler this time. He held the gloves aloft between two fingers, as though they were contaminated. "What should I do with this?" His voice dripped with mockery. "Maybe I can polish the silverware, or dry my tears when business gets tough." The crowd erupted in laughter, some guests clapping, others raising their phones to capture the humiliation. The woman's hands trembled slightly at her sides, though she stood rooted, her chin lifting a fraction, as though defying his cruelty and silence. Ethan bent forward, his smirk inches from her face, performing for the cameras. The gloves dangled between them like a symbol of her smallness. But then, as his eyes lingered on the leather, something flickered across his expression. The laughter around him blurred, the chandeliers dimmed in his mind, and for a split second, Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO, was gone. In his place, a boy shivered in the icy wind of a Brooklyn street corner, his hands raw, clutching newspapers to sell before nightfall. The gloves, they weren't just gloves. They were his. The music faltered. The crowd sensed the shift, but didn't understand it yet. Cameras kept flashing, though now they captured a different face on Ethan, no longer triumphant, but unsettled, as though a secret had just clawed its way back to the surface. And the woman, Maggie Turner, stood silent, her eyes carrying memories no one else could see. The laughter rolled through the ballroom like thunder trapped beneath chandeliers. Guests doubled over, some covering their mouths, others delighting in the spectacle, as if cruelty were another form of entertainment. The gloves dangled limply from Ethan's hand, a grotesque punchline to an elaborate joke no one dared to question. Only Ethan Cole, a hedge fund manager, muttered between chuckles, could turn trash into theater, but not everyone laughed. Near the grand staircase, a young actress shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting from the gloves to the woman's face. A senator's wife pursed her lips, whispering into her husband's ear. Even the quartet faltered, their bows slowing, strings whining against silence, before the conductor flicked his wrist to force them back into rhythm. The woman stood unmoving, her small frame almost fragile against the towering chandeliers and the gilded mirrors, reflecting every angle of her humiliation. Yet there was something in her stillness, a defiance, a refusal to break, that unsettled a few of the onlookers. Her eyes remained steady, fixed not on the gloves but on Ethan himself. Ethan, however, basked in the performance. He tilted the gloves as though weighing them, then tossed them lightly into the air and caught them, milking another round of laughter. "A billionaire's birthday, and someone brings me hand-me-downs," he quipped, his grin sharp enough to cut glass. "Next year maybe I'll get a half-eaten sandwich. Wouldn't that be delightful?" The crowd roared again, though the sound no longer washed over him the same way. For the first time in years, the applause and laughter felt hollow. His hand, still gripping the gloves, tingled. The leather was rough, the stitching uneven, but familiar in a way that gnawed at his composure. His chest tightened, the sound of the crowd dimming to a dull roar in his ears. He forced another smile, wider this time, as though stretching it could hold back the unease creeping in. "Tell me, was this the best the thrift shop had to offer?" he taunted, his words dripping with cruelty. Cameras flashed in rapid succession, capturing the sneer, the imbalance of power staged in perfect symmetry. Billionaire towering over pauper. The woman's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Instead, she met his gaze with eyes unflinching, eyes that seemed to peel away the tuxedo, the tailored arrogance, the empire he had built. For the briefest moment, Ethan faltered, his voice caught in his throat, a crack he quickly disguised with a cough. The silence spread like a shadow, thin at first, then heavy. Not everyone noticed, but a few did. The actress near the staircase frowned. A journalist lowered his camera. The senator's wife's whisper carried sharper now. "Why does he look like that?" Ethan's fingers closed tighter around the gloves, knuckles whitening. The laughter of the crowd rang false against his ears, like glass breaking. He tried to shake it off, lifting his glass of champagne, forcing another toast. "To laughter," he declared, raising it high. But when he brought it to his lips, his hand trembled so slightly that only those closest saw. The gloves slid from his grip, falling onto the polished marble floor with a soft, inconspicuous sound. No one should have noticed, yet somehow everyone did. The laughter hushed. Dozens of eyes turned, watching the leather land at his feet. For the first time that night, no one dared laugh. Ethan stared at them, chest rising and falling with uneven breath. The memory of cold winters clawed at him, the sting of frostbitten fingers, the weight of newspapers under his arm, the scrape of boots too thin against the snow. He blinked, and the chandeliers above blurred into icy street lamps. The woman bent slowly, her movements deliberate, graceful in their humility. She picked up the gloves, held them in both hands, and offered them back. No words, no explanation, just the quiet weight of memory pressing between them. The crowd held its breath. Cameras clicked, but softer now, like whispers afraid of breaking the moment, and Ethan Cole, billionaire of Manhattan, felt something he hadn't in decades: fear. The hush in the ballroom was heavier than the crystal chandeliers overhead. The very air seemed to contract, pressing against skin and lungs, as if the marble walls themselves demanded silence. The gloves rested once again in Maggie's hands, their worn leather out of place among glittering diamonds and gold cufflinks. Every guest stared, waiting, uncertain whether they were witnessing a performance or something far more raw, something no invitation had promised. Ethan cleared his throat, forcing a laugh. "Well," he said, his voice loud, rehearsed, "I suppose every king needs a court jester." The words fell flat, echoing into stillness. No one laughed this time. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between the billionaire and the woman who stood so plainly before him. Near the champagne fountain, two young bankers whispered, "Why does she look at him like that?" one asked. "Maybe she's family," the other suggested. "Some long-lost aunt?" The speculation spread in murmurs. Reporters' pens hovered, cameras adjusted, searching for the narrative beyond the polished press release they'd expected. Tonight was supposed to celebrate power and success, yet here was a moment that reeked of vulnerability, a crack in the marble statue of Ethan Cole. Ethan felt the heat rise beneath his collar. His tuxedo, custom-tailored in Milan, suddenly clung too tightly, suffocating. He set his glass down on the nearest tray, fingers trembling against the stem. The gloves, those damned gloves, haunted his vision even as Maggie lowered them gently into the box once more. His chest constricted, each breath shallow, uneven. A memory flickered like a film reel behind his eyes, snow falling thick and heavy. A boy, himself, kneeling on icy pavement, rubbing numb hands together, his breath visible in the winter air, stomach growling from hunger. The same gloves, too big for his small hands, stitched clumsily at the seams, wrapped around his raw skin. "Ethan?" Maggie's voice was soft, breaking through the echo of the past. He looked at her sharply, too sharply, as though the softness itself were an attack. "Do you think this is funny?" His voice cracked louder than intended, reverberating against the marble walls. Several guests flinched. A glass clinked nervously on a tray. Maggie didn't answer. She only watched him, her eyes steady and calm, though there was sorrow buried deep within them. From the back of the room, a voice rose hesitantly. "Is he all right?" someone asked. The question rippled forward, unspoken yet heavy. For years, Ethan Cole had been untouchable, unshakable, the billionaire CEO who crushed competitors and turned fortunes to dust with a single decision. But now, under the gaze of 100 eyes, he was unraveling. He straightened his shoulders, forcing composure, summoning the mask that had never failed him before. "I'm fine," he said sharply, each word bitten off. "It's just a misunderstanding." He gestured vaguely toward Maggie, as though she were the confusion incarnate. But the silence lingered. A senator cleared his throat. The young actress whispered to her friend, "Why does it feel like she knows him better than we do?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss Maggie, to have security escort her out and erase the awkwardness. Yet when he opened his mouth, the words caught in his throat. For the second time that night, the gloves blurred his vision, dragging him backward into memories he had buried beneath skyscrapers and stock tickers. A boy's voice echoed in his skull, faint but undeniable. "Mr. Cole, papers for a nickel, please? I need to eat tonight." He staggered a step back, pressing a hand against the edge of the champagne table for balance. Gasps swept through the crowd. Cameras flashed again, this time capturing not power, but weakness. And still Maggie stood silent, holding the box with the gloves cradled inside, her presence steady as stone. The billionaire who mocked her now fought for breath, his empire trembling with each inhale. The glittering chandeliers above blurred again into icy street lamps, their glow harsher, colder. Ethan blinked rapidly, fighting to stay in the present, but the ballroom dissolved before him. In its place came a biting wind, the howl of January sweeping down narrow Brooklyn streets. He was no longer 40, no longer a billionaire draped in silken pride. He was 12. His coat was too thin, sleeves frayed, and the holes in his shoes let slush seep in until his socks froze against his skin. His hands, chapped and red, fumbled with a stack of newspapers strapped with twine. He called out, his young voice cracking against the emptiness. "Papers for a nickel! Get your evening paper!" But the people brushed past. Some sneered, others didn't look at him at all. His stomach tightened with hunger, the kind that gnawed until his ribs ached. The cold was a predator biting at his fingers, his ears, his very breath. Then, a door creaked open. From the stoop of a weathered brick building, a woman's voice called, "Ethan?" The boy looked up, startled. There she was, Maggie Turner, though younger then, her hair dark, tied back in the same neat bun, her apron dusted with flour. She held out a steaming bowl of soup, the smell drifting through the icy air like mercy itself. "Come inside, child, before you freeze." He shook his head stubbornly. "Can't. Gotta sell the papers." His voice trembled, more from pride than from cold. Maggie's eyes softened. She stepped forward, placing the bowl on the stoop. "Then take this. Warm yourself first. You'll sell better if you're not shivering." Hesitant, Ethan set the newspapers down and wrapped his small hands around the bowl. The heat burned at first, but it was a sweet kind of pain, thawing the numbness. He drank greedily, the broth spilling down his chin. Maggie watched, her arms crossed, not with judgment but with a patience that wrapped around him like another blanket. And then, those gloves. She appeared again the next night, offering a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Your hands won't survive this winter without these," she said. Inside lay a pair of leather gloves, too large but carefully stitched. He looked up at her with suspicion. "Where'd you get these?" "Don't you worry about that," Maggie answered, brushing it off. "They'll keep you warm, that's what matters." The boy pulled them on. The leather scratched against his raw fingers, but the warmth was immediate, life-saving. He flexed his hands, eyes wide. He wanted to ask why she cared, why she gave when she had so little herself, but instead he muttered, "Thanks," before snatching his newspapers and running into the snow. Back in the ballroom, the memories shattered like glass against marble. Ethan gasped, dragging air into his lungs. Sweat prickled under his tuxedo despite the cool air conditioning. His chest rose and fell in short bursts. The sound of cameras snapping clawed him back into the present, each flash like lightning exposing his secret past. The gloves in Maggie's hands were no longer relics. They were proof of who he had been, proof of what he owed her. Guests murmured louder now. A businessman leaned to his wife. Why does she look at him like that? Like she raised him? Ethan's jaw locked. His empire, his power, his arrogance, all of it balanced on the thin thread of silence. He wanted to scream at Maggie to leave, to vanish and take those memories with her. But her presence was immovable, as if she belonged here more than the senators and movie stars combined. She held the gloves closer to her chest, her voice soft but clear enough for those nearby to hear. "You remember, don't you, Ethan?" And he did. Against his will, against his pride, he remembered everything. The ballroom was a cathedral of silence now. The laughter, once effortless, had curdled into discomfort. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum lower, their brilliance mocking the man who stood at the center, unraveling. Ethan Cole, the untouchable billionaire, adjusted his cufflinks with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The gloves, those gloves, burned into his vision like a scar he could never erase. He tried to speak, to reclaim the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, forcing his voice into its usual command, "sometimes generosity comes in unexpected forms." The sentence dangled awkwardly, thin as a thread ready to snap. A senator's forced chuckle died halfway, swallowed by the unease of the room. Maggie didn't flinch. She stepped forward just slightly, her shoes soft against the marble, her plain dress an insult to the gowns that shimmered like galaxies. And yet, all eyes followed her, not the diamonds. She held the box closer, her fingers curling protectively around it. "You wore them every winter," she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its gentleness. "I stitched them more times than I can count. Without them, your hands would have frozen." Gasps echoed in pockets of the crowd. The young actress near the staircase widened her eyes. She knew him as a boy, she whispered to her friend, who nodded, unable to look away. Ethan's face darkened, pride warring against memory. His jaw clenched as if he could grind the past into dust. "That's enough," he snapped, though his voice lacked the iron edge it once carried. "You don't belong here." But even as he spoke, the words betrayed him. His eyes flickered, betraying the boy he once was, the boy who had stood shivering on Brooklyn sidewalks, clutching newspapers with raw hands, saved only by the warmth of gloves sewn by this very woman. The guests shifted, whispers swelling into a low tide of judgment. They had come to adore the Titan of Manhattan, but now they saw something else. A mask slipping, a man cracking. A secret revealed not by scandal in the papers, but by a pair of patched gloves. Maggie took another step forward. Her gaze held him. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with something heavier. Truth. You don't have to pretend with me, Ethan. I saw you when you had nothing, and I see you now. The words struck deeper than any insult. He inhaled sharply, but the breath caught in his throat, shallow and ragged. His hand went instinctively to his chest, fingers pressing against the silk of his shirt, as though the fabric could shield him from the weight pressing inward. Somewhere behind the crowd, a guest whispered, "He looks like he can't breathe." Another added, "This isn't just a show." The room leaned forward as one, the tension electric. Cameras no longer flashed with excitement, but with hunger for revelation. Every journalist present knew this was no longer a celebration. It was history unfolding in real time. Ethan straightened, fighting for control. His empire, his reputation, his very identity balanced on this moment. If he broke, they would devour him. He tried to sneer again, to mock Maggie as he had minutes before, but his lips betrayed him, trembling instead of curving into cruelty. And Maggie, steady as stone, lifted the gloves once more, placing them gently on the edge of the table between them. She didn't force them into his hands. She didn't demand recognition. She only set them there like an offering. The sight was unbearable. For Ethan Cole, it wasn't a pair of gloves. It was the weight of hunger, of snow, of survival, and of the only person who had ever given without asking anything in return. And for the first time in decades, surrounded by New York's most powerful, Ethan Cole felt small again. The murmurs in the ballroom had become unbearable, a tide rising against Ethan's carefully built fortress of control. Every whisper was a dagger. Is she his family? Did he grow up poor? What is she doing here? For decades he had crafted the myth of Ethan Cole, the ruthless billionaire who had pulled himself from nothing by sheer brilliance. And now, before 100 cameras, a woman with plain shoes and trembling hands threatened to unravel it all. He wanted to end it. One word: security. And she would be gone. The guards waited along the walls, eyes alert, already sensing the storm in their employer's stance. He only had to raise his hand, but he didn't. His fingers twitched, but no command left his lips, because the gloves still lay on the table, accusing him with their silence. And Maggie's eyes, steady and unblinking, held him prisoner more effectively than any iron bars. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice a tremor that carried through the hall, "you can't erase who you were, not with money, not with marble walls or glass towers." A senator cleared his throat, uncomfortable. A reporter leaned forward, his pen scratching furiously. The young actress whispered, "She knows the real him." Ethan's heart pounded. He tried to summon anger, to drown the shame. "You think you know me?" His tone cracked, too sharp, too desperate. "You think a pair of rags makes you important here?" He gestured around, sweeping toward the chandeliers, the gowns, the polished marble. "Look where you are. Look where I am. I won." But the declaration didn't land. No applause, no laughter, only silence. Thicker now, suffocating. And inside him, the boy he had buried clawed to the surface. He saw again the frozen streets, the hunger, the way Maggie had opened her door when no one else had. He remembered how those gloves had been stitched with hands that trembled from working long hours, given freely to a child who wasn't her own. His chest tightened again, shallow breaths escaping. He pressed a hand to his sternum, trying to mask it as adjusting his jacket. But the truth was undeniable. He was unraveling. Maggie's gaze softened. She didn't gloat. She didn't expose him with cruelty. Instead, she whispered words only he could hear. "You don't have to fight me, Ethan. I came because you forgot, and I can't let you forget." Her voice was mercy and torture. The crowd leaned forward, sensing the moment. The billionaire, untouchable for so long, stood cornered not by rivals or scandals, but by a pair of gloves and a woman who refused to be erased. Ethan's throat burned. The choice was clawing at him. Bury her with humiliation and salvage the myth, or let the truth breathe, even if it destroyed him. And for the first time in his empire's history, Ethan Cole didn't know which path to take. The ballroom had shifted. It no longer belonged to Ethan, no matter how high the ceiling soared or how bright the chandeliers burned. The power that once clung to him like a second skin had thinned, slipping away into the murmurs of the crowd. The senators, the CEOs, the actors in their sequined gowns, none looked at him with admiration anymore. Their eyes were sharp, curious, even judgmental. He felt it like a chill crawling up his spine. These people didn't want gods. They wanted spectacles. They wanted blood. Ethan straightened his shoulders, his instinct screaming to recover, to dominate. He forced a laugh, brittle and thin. "Enough of this sideshow," he declared, his voice carrying through the room. "Let's get back to celebrating, shall we? The bar is open, the music—" But the quartet had fallen silent. Their bows hovered uncertainly over strings, waiting. The crowd didn't move. Not a single champagne flute rose in agreement. All eyes remained on the box, on the gloves, on the billionaire whose mask was slipping. "Why doesn't he just throw her out?" someone whispered near the fountain. "Because he can't," another replied. "Look at his face. She owns him somehow." The whispers stung more than laughter ever could. Ethan's hand shook as he reached for his glass, but he missed the stem and set it back down too quickly, a tremor betraying him. His empire was built on never showing weakness, and now weakness dripped from him like sweat. Maggie stood her ground, plain and unyielding. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't accused him outright, yet her silence screamed louder than his words. She let the crowd draw their own conclusions, and they did, faster than wildfire. A businessman muttered to his wife, "So the billionaire was once a street kid?" The actress leaned in, whispering, "And she saved him. That's what this is." Ethan heard it all, every murmur, every suspicion. His chest constricted again, breath shallow. He fought to mask it with posture, tugging at his tuxedo jacket as though adjusting fabric could hide the boy clawing out of him. He wanted to lash out, to crush Maggie under the same arrogance that had silenced rivals, board members, politicians. But when he looked at her, she wasn't trembling. She wasn't ashamed. She only looked steady. And in that steadiness, he saw himself. Not the billionaire, but the boy she had fed, clothed, and watched grow. "Stop looking at me like that," he muttered under his breath, his voice sharp but shaking. Maggie tilted her head slightly. "Like what, Ethan?" He had no answer. Because he knew the truth. She looked at him like family, the one thing his billions could never buy. The guests leaned in, their hunger growing. The mighty Ethan Cole, undone by a woman in a plain dress and a pair of gloves. And as he gripped the edge of the table for balance, Ethan realized the room wasn't his anymore. It belonged to her. The ballroom had become a courtroom, and Ethan stood at its center as the accused. He felt it in every glance that cut through him, in every whisper that swelled into something heavier. Judgment. These weren't his guests anymore. They were witnesses, jurors, vultures circling. A senator's wife broke the silence first. 40 years old, and still cruel to the hand that fed him, she said, her voice carrying farther than she intended. Heads turned. No one defended Ethan. The hedge fund manager, who had laughed loudest earlier, now shifted awkwardly, tugging at his tie. "Not so funny now, is it?" his colleague muttered beside him. The tide was turning fast. Ethan felt it in his bones. He wanted to shout, to slam a fist against the marble table, to remind them who paid for the champagne they sipped and the music they ignored. But when he opened his mouth, the words stuck. His chest burned, air slicing thin and jagged. He could only manage a rasp. "Enough," he croaked. "This ends now." But it didn't. Maggie lifted the gloves from the box once more, holding them not as weapons but as testimony. "Do you remember, Ethan?" she asked, her tone calm, almost tender. "The nights you came to my door with nothing in your stomach, the mornings you left with newspapers, your hands too raw to carry them. These gloves kept you alive." The silence that followed was crushing. A journalist lowered his camera and whispered, "She's telling the truth. Look at his face." Ethan's eyes darted around the room, desperate for an ally, for one person willing to laugh again, to break the spell, but no one did. He was alone. The empire he thought he carried inside him collapsed beneath the gaze of strangers. His breath grew shorter. His collar clung to his neck like a noose. The chandelier lights blurred, bending into streaks of white. He pressed his hand hard against his chest, a desperate attempt to steady himself. The crowd saw it, and their judgment sharpened. "He's panicking," someone whispered. "No," another said. "He's cracking. This is the truth he's been hiding." Maggie stepped closer, only inches from him now. The gloves trembled slightly in her hand, though her gaze was unshaken. "I didn't come here to ruin you," she whispered, though everyone heard. "I came to remind you. You were loved, Ethan, even when you had nothing." The words tore through him more brutally than the laughter ever had. His knees weakened, the marble beneath his polished shoes shifting like ice. He gripped the table, fighting collapse, but his breath came in shallow bursts. And the crowd, smelling blood, no longer looked at him with awe. They looked at him with hunger. The billionaire had fallen from his throne, and the world was watching. The silence in the ballroom was suffocating now, as though every chandelier crystal absorbed the oxygen from the air. Ethan's vision swam, the gilded walls warped, bending under the weight of memories clawing their way out of the dark. His hand pressed harder against his chest, yet the pressure only grew. The empire he had built with iron and stone could not hold back the frailty of his own breath. Guests no longer whispered. They only stared, wide-eyed, frozen in the theater of his collapse. A billionaire CEO, who once mocked a poor maid in front of cameras, now stood trembling before a simple woman with frayed gloves. The irony was too sharp for anyone to ignore. Maggie's voice sliced through the stillness, steady and low. "You think power made you strong, but I know the boy you were. I remember the nights you knocked on my door, too hungry to sleep, the mornings your shoes bled through the snow. You wore those gloves until they were more patch than leather." Her words weren't accusations, they were revelations, truths the marble pillars and flashing cameras couldn't erase. Ethan tried to lift his chin, to smirk as he always had, but his body betrayed him. His lips trembled, his knees threatened to buckle. He caught his reflection in the mirror across the room, not the polished titan of finance, but a man aged by arrogance, hollow-eyed, clutching his chest like a beggar clings to bread. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some lowered their glasses. A senator's wife crossed her arms, her disapproval written in stone. "He mocks kindness," she murmured. "But look at him now." Ethan wanted to scream at them all, to remind them that he owned skyscrapers, that his name was etched into the skyline. Yet none of it mattered in this room. All that mattered were the gloves, and the woman who had carried them through decades to place them back in his hands. Maggie stepped closer, holding the gloves out, her eyes never leaving his. "You buried this boy, Ethan, but he's still inside you. You don't have to hide him anymore." The words ripped the last defenses from him. His chest hitched violently, a ragged breath that drew a collective gasp from the audience. He stumbled, one hand reaching for the edge of the table, the other twitching toward the gloves he both feared and craved. For a moment, time froze. Chandeliers hung motionless, cameras paused mid-click. The crowd held its breath. And in that stillness, Ethan Cole, once invincible, untouchable, looked at Maggie as if she were the only anchor in a room full of wolves. His lips parted, the whisper barely audible. Maggie. It was the first time he had spoken her name all night. The guests shifted again, but not with curiosity anymore, with awe. For beneath the silken marble they had just witnessed the mask shatter. And now the boy from Brooklyn stood in its place. The gloves trembled in Maggie's hands, yet her gaze never faltered. Ethan doubled slightly at the table's edge, looked as if the weight of a lifetime pressed onto his shoulders. Every breath rattled in his chest, shallow and uneven, his perfect tuxedo clinging to him like a cage. The crowd remained silent, but no longer out of curiosity. Something deeper had filled the room, a reverence, almost fear. They were no longer watching a billionaire's birthday. They were witnessing a man being stripped bare of everything but truth. Maggie stepped closer. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the marble hall. "You built towers higher than clouds, Ethan. You bought everything you ever wanted. But you cannot buy back the child who once cried from hunger. You cannot erase the boy who needed love more than money." Her words cracked the last shell of defiance around him. Ethan's knees buckled. He caught himself on the table, but his hands shook violently. The gloves stared back at him from her palms, like ghosts of winters past. A journalist whispered, "He's breaking." "No," another corrected. "He's remembering." Ethan's lips parted, his voice raw. "I hated those winters. I hated being weak. I swore I would never go back." Maggie's expression softened. "You weren't weak. You were surviving. And you didn't survive alone." She extended the gloves, closer this time, until they brushed against his hand. The touch was electric. Memories flooded him. The warmth of soup on frozen nights, the sting of needles stitching leather, the soft humming Maggie sang while mending clothes not her own. His chest heaved, and for the first time in decades, tears burned his eyes. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Cameras flashed, desperate to capture the impossible image. Ethan Cole, billionaire CEO, weeping openly before them. He didn't care anymore. His voice cracked, louder now, trembling with release. "You were the only one who cared. When the world passed me by, when no one saw me, you did." The words spilled into the silence like confession in a cathedral. Maggie let the gloves rest between them, and Ethan reached for them with trembling hands. He clutched them as if they were life itself, pressing them to his chest. His tears slipped freely now, carving paths through the mask he had worn for 40 years. The crowd no longer judged. Many looked away, ashamed of their laughter earlier. Some wiped their own eyes, realizing the cruelty of mocking what was never meant as a spectacle. Ethan turned toward Maggie, voice trembling. "I mocked you. I mocked the only good thing I ever had. I don't deserve forgiveness." Maggie touched his cheek, her hand steady. "Maybe not, but forgiveness isn't earned. It's given." And in that moment, with cameras flashing and chandeliers blazing above, Ethan Cole let himself collapse. Not into weakness, but into the arms of the truth he had run from his entire life. The gloves, once mocked as trash, became the crown jewel of the night, and the boy who had once shivered in the snow finally breathed again. The ballroom, once filled with arrogance and laughter, ended in silence and tears. Ethan Cole, the man who mocked kindness, was reminded that true wealth is not measured in glass towers or gold, but in the hands that once held us when the world turned away. Maggie Turner's humble gift tore away his armor and showed everyone that dignity and compassion outlast any empire. And maybe that's the hope we all need to carry, that no matter how far we rise, no matter what pain we bury, there is always someone whose love and kindness kept us alive. If you've ever experienced a moment like this, where a simple gesture carried more weight than fortune itself, share it in the comments. Your story may give someone else the strength to keep going. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this touching story. Tell us in the comments what part moved you the most. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss another story. Leave a like if you believe in dignity and true love. Watch the story I'll leave here on the left. I'm sure it will also move and inspire you.